Man, I cannot believe it. It's a small world.
I know, I know. Thanks for
Oh
joining,
my
my
God,
friend.
when I see your name, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
No, this is awesome. Yeah, I saw your name in the attendance list. I'm
Yeah.
like, Simon, that's great.
All right, I'm not gonna hijack your show. Okay, we can talk later. Okay,
We can. Right on,
good to
Simon.
see you.
Thanks. Good to
All
see you
right,
too, my friend.
all right, bye.
Awesome. Bye. All right, folks. So I'm Jose Ravello. I'm a senior manager of systems engineering at Citrix, and I cover the entire federal government. I really appreciate you coming to today's tech meetup. I know everyone's got some really busy schedules. I know everyone's got a lot on their plate. So so I really appreciate your investment in us. Today, we're going to talk about how you can create your ideal digital workspace with Citrix DaaS. So we're going to talk about what Citrix DaaS is on the Citrix Cloud Government platform and how it can enable agencies to securely deliver apps and data to their workforce. We'll also talk a little bit about how you can improve IT efficiency leveraging Citrix DaaS and also enhancing the user experience. Now, we do have some slides to share with you, so sorry in advance, but we do have several demos lined up for you as well. So hopefully that'll keep your interest going for the remainder of the time that we have together. We like to keep this as conversational as possible. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat box at any time throughout the presentation. We'll also pause at the end to answer any additional questions you may have or questions we're not able to cover during the presentation. So today, your speakers are going to be Glenn Roth, Principal Systems Engineer, Shane Smith, Enterprise Architect, and Sumit Singh, Lead Systems Engineer. Between the three of them, they have decades of experience working across civilian, DoD, and the intelligence community, so make sure that you take advantage of their brainpower while we have it all together in the same space. And without further ado, I will turn things over to Glenn Roth.
Good morning, everyone. Go ahead and get started here. So the question is, what is Citrix DaaS on Citrix Cloud Government? And first and foremost, it's a FedRAMP authorized DaaS control plane, which is something that all of our customers have been asking for. We achieved that earlier this year. And really what that means to you is it's an isolated environment that allows our public sector customers to meet your compliance and security concerns, right? So every agency is a little bit different. They have cloud teams, different security postures, but we've met that FedRAMP requirements there, so that way we have a level playing field, for that. And also, within Citrix Cloud Government, we've gone and created the geographical boundaries, so that way all the public sector customers are in their own realm, so that way it's not commingled with our commercial customers and stuff like that. So with that, we're going to continue on, how did we get here, right? So I've been on the journey, with a lot of customers over the years. And really it started with the physical desktop, right? Everyone had a desktop. We thought life couldn't get any better, right? We could, put the compute there, the memory. Life didn't get much better. But the problem is it started becoming an issue with management, right? So are the machines online? Are they getting patched? We need more machines because we're getting more users. Not only do we have to get a whole team to, image those, distribute them, the whole works, right? It just was very a lot of overhead there, and that's really how we transitioned, over to um, you know VDI and DaaS, right? So with VDI, with having it centralized the image management and the whole works, we could go ahead and have that golden image. We could go ahead and rapidly deploy machines, but we were still confined to the bounds of the data center, right? So, if you needed additional users, and well, did we have the server space for that? Do we have the CPU? Do we have the compute? With DaaS, all that goes away, right? So we have that cloud management control plane where we can go ahead and manage everything from one location, one admin console, which we'll show you a little bit later here in a demo, and really the scalability for on-demand type activities. So one of the things that I like to talk about with a variety of customers that I've worked with is you get that request from upper management, whether it's the CIO or someone like that, that, hey, we need to have, additional resources or virtual machines or applications available, tomorrow, go get it done. Well, in the past, that tomorrow was 6 months from now, right? So till we went and procured hardware, got the hardware, racked and stacked it, build it out, everything was good to go, minimum 6 months. With DaaS, we can go ahead and do that in a matter of, an hour, right? So, really, what are customers, why are they considering DaaS? And, a lot of it goes to what I just, spoke about with having that, flexible, ability to scale, ability to, both scale in and scale out, um, you know, re, to meet the requirements that you guys have, right? Also, when we look at, modernization, we can go ahead and deploy, you know, into a variety of locations, which we'll get into a little bit later, um, and really kind of give a best of breed across a multi-hybrid cloud approach. So let's take a step here and try to match some of the use cases that you have within your organizations on reasons that customers are moving to DaaS, right? We have a variety here: contractors, seasonal workers, business continuity. We saw a lot of that with COVID. I'm going to take a quick sidebar here with seasonal workers. So I have one customer. There are a few thousand users every day on VDI. Things are great. Every summer they get 300 to 400 interns. Well, that was kind of you know, an issue, right? Because we had to acquire hardware to run those 300 or 400 interns on VDI, and then the rest of the year, the other remaining 9 months, that hardware is just sitting there, spinning, creating heat, costing money, and more to maintain. So for them, they saw DaaS as the answer. So they migrated to Citrix DaaS on Citrix Cloud Government, and now they can just go ahead and spin up 300 additional machines, use them for 3 months, spin them down, and the cost goes away, right? So there's more and more agencies that we're seeing this type of use cases. Shane, how about you? Have you seen anything like that with the account sets that you've worked with?
Yeah, I definitely have. I think that one of the good use cases here is being able to burst into a public cloud location. Some customers just they don't have the funding to expand to additional hardware. Maybe they don't have room in the data center, and just kind of like you said with seasonal workers, you might have to just expand into a resource location. You don't have to spin up a lot of infrastructure to support that, but hey, I want to throw and get some Windows 10 or Windows 11 virtual desktops online quickly. I can do that with a public cloud location and with minimal change to the overall infrastructure.
Appreciate that, Shane. Thank you. So we talked about some of the use cases that you may see within your environments or your account customer base. Let's go ahead and take a step back on, well, what can it do for you, right? So I've been in your shoes. I was a Citrix admin for 10 years prior to working for Citrix, and anything I could do to make my life easier, I thought was great, right? So really, in my view of the world, this makes your life easier because you get out of the updates, you get out of the constant patching, the additional, security scans for each patch, stuff like that. And really features. So when we look at going with Citrix Cloud Government, the features are available to you sooner, for both the admin side of the house and also end users. So when LTSR came out, we thought, hey, this is great. Long-term service release, we can set it, forget it, kind of do our updates every now and then, and we're good to go. But the problem that I've seen within my customer base is that we end up with what I call LTSR lag. So we're waiting for that 12 to 18 months for the critical update to come out for the LTSR, and we're losing functionality and features, right? So say that you have a smart card authentication, right, within your environment, and there's a new feature that comes out. You have to wait 12 to 18 months till that's rolled up into a critical update, um, and functional update for your LTSR version. By going with DaaS on CCG, you get it today, right? As soon as it's available, we're rolling it out, updating our um, our backend, so that way you can take advantage of those features, much sooner. Also on the admin side for additional features and visibility into the environment. DaaS is going to be the first thing that's updated and gives you those available features. So we've talked a lot about spinning up and spinning down resources, um, and where the different locations are. We'll get into that here a little bit later with Shane during one of our demos. But really, at the end of the day, instead of worrying about all those patching and updates and stuff like that, we let the admins just manage the environment. So think about your Citrix policies, think about your VDA with the images that you're presenting to the users. You can continue to fine tune those and give the best user experience to your customers as possible. The last thing I've seen that do is Microsoft licensing cost reduction. So we've seen with many customers, SQL cost to kind of run a Citrix environment can be quite large. With this, we actually migrate all that type of stuff up into the cloud, and then we manage it for you, right? So we'll get into some of the architectural stuff a little bit later, but for now, I'm going to pass it over to Shane so he can show you the control plane.
Hey guys, do we want to take a quick pause? We do actually have a question in chat.
Oh, sure. What's the question?
So this is a three-part question. Which cloud provider does Citrix DaaS use? Let's start there.
What do we use as far as where we're hosted? So we're running our Citrix DaaS on Azure, but we can actually host it in a variety of of uh, cloud providers, which we'll go into a little bit later. Shane, do you want to go ahead and take the AVD versus Citrix DaaS questions? What are some of the differences?
Yeah, I'd love to. So really, when you think about AVD, that is Microsoft's solution of a control plane. So really what that is allowing you to do is have a landing page for users to browse to, authenticate, and then launch their Windows 10 or Windows Server resource. So AVD is the the control mechanism there, where Citrix is kind of the same thing, but with Citrix DaaS allows you to take advantage of existing on-premise resources while you're working on bursting into or moving into a public cloud like Microsoft Azure. And it doesn't have to be locked just to Microsoft Azure, right? So Citrix allows you to be flexible and move to different cloud providers, as your journey expands and moves. So that's really the primary differences there. We can still leverage that Windows 10 multi-session machine, which is one of the really great benefits that AVD is leading towards, and Citrix can provide you that same functionality.
I'll jump on the Citrix UPM and FS Logic question here. So really it's the customer's choice. I have some that are leveraging Citrix UPM just because that's what they're used to and that's what they've traditionally done. But I've also had some that have migrated to FS Logic or started from scratch with FS Logic if it's a brand new deployment.
Yeah, like Jose said, great questions. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to this demo here. So Glenn, appreciate the overview. And I personally I've got to say I'm really excited to to not have to manage all these software updates and installations to my delivery controllers and other supporting components. Like yourself, I was a Citrix administrator previous to joining Citrix, so not having to run through those components and multiple updates definitely makes things a lot easier. So I'm going to break away from the slides for just a moment, and we're going to take a quick peek at what Citrix Cloud Government looks like from the administrative console side of the house. So first, I'm going to navigate to citrix.cloud.us and enter my username and password. Next, I'll enter my MFA code and then select the customer account that I wish to administer. We reach the Citrix Cloud Government landing page, and then from here, you get a brief overview of the account, what services are available, the number of resource locations and domains, account notifications, and then the options to open a support ticket if you need to. By clicking the hamburger menu up in the top left corner, we're going to see that you can manage Citrix DaaS, which is formerly known as Virtual Apps and Desktop Service, Identity and Access Management, which is where you can add administrators and configure user identity sources, resource locations, which are the hosting locations for applications and desktop workloads, better known as the virtual delivery agents. And then you can do the workspace configuration, which is where you can configure workspace branding and the access URL. So once we select and manage Citrix DaaS, you're taken to this quick deploy overview page. We're going to go ahead and click into manage and be taken to what we call Web Studio. One of the really nice enhancements that come with Citrix Cloud Government is the feature-rich Web Studio, which replaces Citrix Studio. From here, you're going to see the ability to create machine catalogs, delivery groups, manage Citrix policies, and add hosting connections, as well as publish applications. So looks all very similar to the on-premise product. Another benefit is you have the monitoring capabilities that look just like Citrix Director built right into this, and you can quickly come through, manage what connections are currently connected, take a look if you need to get down into the user session, and really dive in deeper to what's going on in the environment right now.
So one of the things to point out there, Shane, is that you can do all that from one screen, right? We're not logging into multiple locations.
Exactly. Having it all from a single pane of glass is really one of the major benefits, so that you don't have to jump around to different consoles. Everything there is all in one. So it makes it a little bit more seamless for you to manage. Thanks, Glenn.
Oh, thank you, Shane. All right.
Yeah.
Now that we got done with that, do we have any questions?
We do have a question for you, Glenn. Johnny wants to know, how do users authenticate? Is there a way to connect with on-prem AD for users and groups?
Yep. Yeah. So when we set up the authentication methods, we can connect into your existing on-prem AD. We've done that for a variety of customers. There's also other ways that we can integrate as well.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn. A common trend that we're starting to see, right, is customers moving to other identities providers, right, like Azure Active Directory, for example, to integrate with maybe the tenant you've already set up with your Office 365 environment. Definitely the ways to do that and add in your on-premise AD as well as other identity sources.
So the LTSR version is only going to be for your on-prem or on-premises deployment. So whenever you go with Citrix DaaS on CCG, you would be in the current release methodology. All right. So I want to talk about, and we touched on this a little bit earlier with some of the questions that came in, but where can I run my workloads? And one of the things that I really like is that with that single admin console, right, we can run workloads anywhere, right? So we can run them on Azure, AWS, GCP, VMware. We can run them on-prem on top of Nutanix with AHV, Zen server. So really it's a one-stop shop. We can have multi-hybrid approach with multiple clouds. We can have it also on premises. So one customer I'm working with right now, we're building out an environment for 50,000 users, and Azure is their primary data resource location, right? So we have both HA and DR built out in Azure, for the virtual desktop VMs for the users. But they also wanted to take a step further, that in case Azure were to have some sort of issue, that they could also fail over to AWS. So now we're actually building out AWS as well, that they can do a full cloud DR, right? So if Azure were to go down, they could actually fail everything over to AWS. So the possibilities are endless. I have customers doing cloud and and local workloads on top of existing, hardware that they have today that they wanted to get, run through what was end of life, stuff like that. Looks like we have a question came in. If you are already using Citrix DaaS, do we assume that we already using the government cloud? If not, can we switch? So yeah, that's definitely something that the majority of our federal customers are leveraging the government version. We had a few that actually opted for commercial for their own reasons. But if we can, I bet if you want to work with your account team, we can verify which one you're on and make sure everything's good to go. Okay, so with that, I'm actually going to send it back over to Shane. He's going to show us how easy it is to actually add a resource location into Citrix DaaS.
Thank you, Glenn. Let me go ahead and, as you mentioned real quick on resource locations, there's a lot of different options here for where our resources reside. And really, a resource location is just that. It's a representation of wherever our resources reside. So whether that's a public cloud, a private cloud, a branch office, or one of your data centers, if you already have resources in your own cloud or data center, your resources remain exactly where they are. There's no need to move them anywhere else to be able to use them with Citrix Cloud Government. So back at the landing page in Citrix Cloud Government, we navigate to the resource locations under that hamburger menu. As you can see, I've already got a couple configured here. I have resources and cloud connectors already deployed on-premise in my East and West Coast data centers, as well as starting to lay the groundwork for deploying into AWS, where I've just installed my 2 cloud connectors. So let's go create a hosting connection in that AWS resource location so that we can get ready to create some machine catalogs. From the hosting connection or the hosting section, we add a new connection and we're going to select our new zone name, which is that AWS US East 1. I'm going to select the connection from AWS EC2. And then now we have to present our credentials, which is, in my case, we're using role-based authentication, which is a feature only available for AWS. We enter role-based auth as our API and secret key. Then we can use the IAM role assigned to those cloud connectors as the permission into that environment. I'll quickly provide a name for this connection, select my region, and then when that comes up, I'm actually going to be able to see my VPCs that I've already created. And then I will choose the availability zone that I have put my resources, or I'm going to put my resources into. Next, I'm going to name my resources, which is just a label of what these resources are doing. And then I'm going to choose the appropriate networking subnet so that I'll know where I'm going to place these. And then from there, I'll be able to create machine catalogs and provision desktops or applications that are hosted in that new AWS resource location. So Glenn, you're up. Let's see what else you have for us.
All right, thank you. So, we've kind of gone over some of the different views within the consoles and whatnot. So really, let's start looking at some of the architecture, right? So let's first look on the left. So the left, everyone should be used to, right? Because this is what you're running today. We have, ADCs up in the edge. We have customers coming in. We have storefront, delivery controllers, SQL, all that connecting in and running, managing all this, running on top of different, hardware sets to, provide that to your end users. So then in my beautiful simplified version, it's just Citrix DaaS. And I know you're all going to say, well, Glenn, it's not that simple, right? You guys put these pretty graphs up there and just makes it look like it's so easy. So let's go ahead and do one more slide here and start digging in. So how does it work? Essentially, with this diagram here, we kind of show the services that we're moving up, right? So when you think about the things that you're managing today, such as Studio, Director, licensing, delivery controllers, SQL, all that is moved up into Citrix DaaS and Citrix Cloud Government, and we manage that. When we go a little bit further down here, we have the cloud connectors, which Citrix continues to manage, and then managed by customer is the actual images, Active Directory for authentication. If you have existing ADCs that when you continue to leverage, you would manage that as well. So really, this kind of breaks it up and shows you, who's managing what in different layers. And kind of go from there. So if we take it, one more step further and kind of put it in a little bit of a breakdown here, when we look at the traditional, method, delivery controllers, you guys are managing and mainly configuring them today. That would be taken over by Citrix DaaS, SQL, licensing server, Studio, all would be managed by Citrix DaaS. And really, the configuration left by you would be managing the delivery groups, the VDAs, any Citrix policies that you'd want to apply, to your customers, stuff like that, right? So all that stuff that you're upgrading and managing today in the back end all goes away. They really let you guys, fine tune your environments and keep everything up and running for the best user experience for your customers. So just to kind of reiterate, we can leverage multiple clouds, also on-premises deployments with, VMware as a backend, Hyper-V, whatnot. Looks like we got a few questions here. I'm going to pause. Does the government version of DaaS allow my resources in Azure Commercial Cloud? Yes, we can have Citrix Cloud Government and DaaS on CCG manage Azure commercial workloads. That is 100% a model that we support, and we have many customers doing that today. Next question. Do you have a virtual NetScaler or gateway for government? So we do have virtual NetScalers that we can deploy in a variety of locations, whether it's in the cloud or on premises. They're actually VPX FIPS appliances that we have many customers leveraging today. As far as a fully managed ADC or gateway, not yet. That's something we're working towards. So that way we can give you the entire stack for that. Shane, did you have anything else to add there?
No, you got it. Thanks.
All right. Well, if we kind of continue on here on our journey, well, how do we get there? That's always the number one question. Well, this is all great, Glenn. I want to get out of the update game. I want to get the latest features for my admins and for my end users. How do I get there? Well, the easiest way is actually to leverage the Citrix provided migration tool. So we actually have a deployment guide, which goes step by step in a tool that actually helps manage and move over all your Citrix policies, your delivery groups, all that for you. And really, the other thing that I have quite a lot of discussions and whiteboards on with my customers is, instead of moving to the next LTSR, whether it's 2203 or something like that, take that time and effort to actually migrate to Citrix Cloud Government. That way, it's a one-time transition. From there, you can future-proof your environment to deploy workloads in AWS, Azure, GCP, on premises. It doesn't matter. It's a one-stop shop after that, and you get out of that upgrade game. So we'll get into a little bit later on what it takes to get there from a licensing perspective. But for now, I'm actually going to pass it back over to Shane, and we're going to demo the migration tool so you can see how quick and easy it is to get everything up into Citrix DaaS on CCG.
Okay, yep. Thanks, Glenn. And yeah, last thing to show you here, the automated configuration tool. And I got to say, it's really useful for migrating policies and configuration up into Citrix Cloud Government from your existing on-premises virtual apps and desktop site. And what this allows you to do is take let's say you have hundreds of applications. It takes a while to republish all of those, right? So what the tool does is allows you to move all of those applications, maybe machine catalogs, delivery groups, policies, hosting connections. It allows you to move all of those and then have them already be configured up in the Citrix Cloud Government DaaS offering. You may need to tweak some things, whether the policies might need to be changed, or how we want to reconfigure where applications may be published from. But a lot of that heavy lifting can be done using this automated configuration tool. So first thing to know, like Glenn said, there's a lot of documentation. We have a complete POC guide for the tool. You can find this in our Citrix Tech Zone. And I encourage everyone to go read this. We'll provide links afterwards, but it has a complete walkthrough of how to use the tool, how to prepare the environment, and everything along the way. So once I've got the tool installed in my on-premise delivery controller, I'm going to open up the auto-config PowerShell window as an admin. And then the first thing I'll run is export CVAD AC to file. So this outputs the total configuration into a set of files that I'm going to use to upload. So once that is done, we're going to go back to Citrix Cloud Government, and we have to get some account details. And this is going to be for the account we're going to be importing to. So back in the control plane, I need to generate an API secret. And once I give this a name, it's going to output the ID and the secret here that I'm going to copy off somewhere safe. So we'll use this, and we need to grab this customer ID parameter because it identifies the account. So it allows the scripts to copy this up into your account. So with those copied off to my clipboard, I'm going to flip back over and go back to our PowerShell window. From here, what I'll do is I'm actually run a command. This command allows you to input all of those credentials. I need to also specify my environment is production gov so that we are putting this into Citrix Cloud Government. So last thing here, I need to update my zone mapping. The zone mapping is my resource location, which for me, I've named it just East on premise. I'm going to migrate and put this up into that location. So with all of that completed, my cloud connectors are all set up. Last thing to do is just to go ahead and run this last command, which is the merge CVAD site. What it does is it takes all of that information, it adds it, looks to see was there something that we had outputted from the on-prem site, and then it imports it into the Citrix Cloud Government site. Once that's completed, you get a nice report. I'm going to flip back over to Citrix Cloud Government and then into our DaaS window. From here, you're going to see that there's some additional machine catalogs now. These are resources that I personally had in my on-prem site. There's machine catalogs that have all been pulled over. They're reprovisioning out those devices. And then I've got my delivery groups here. You can see that that is all reconfigured. They're in maintenance mode and just waiting for me. So as you can see, it's a very quick tool that gets a lot of that configuration up there. If you do have, which is one of the larger concerns that I normally see coming from customers, is I have hundreds of applications, application groups, policies. How am I going to get that up there? It seems like a lot of work. So this definitely helps accelerate that process. So it really is that easy, Glenn. I know that we're thinking that it can't be that easy, but I assure you it quite is. So Glenn, take us home.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, it's always great to see a tool like that available and how well it works. So with that, I want to take a little bit of time and just kind of educate everyone on what they need to ask or who they need to talk to and to have all these features available to their for their environment, right? So this is what, from a Citrix perspective, we call this a transition or trade up to DaaS. So we can take your existing licensing that you have today, transition or trade them up, and it gives you all these great features that we've talked about, right? Keeping everything up to date, giving you the flexibility and agility to burst into the cloud or bring on resources very quickly and rapidly, and also tear them down when not needed. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives you a lot of, from my perspective, peace of mind from an admin point of view, because now I have, one-stop shop for everything. I can manage multiple data centers, or everything from one spot. We're not building out multiple farms. We're not doing any of that, right? So really, from an admin perspective, I think it's just amazing. So with that being said, Do we have any more questions?
I'll join you here on camera, see if we have any other questions. I know we still have a good amount of participants here. If there are other questions, you want to put them in the chat. Otherwise, you can always come off mute and we can have a nice interactive conversation.
This is Johnny again.
Hi, Johnny. Yeah, thank you for the
Hi.
questions.
So if you're using Azure AVD, we're not, but I want to. But if you are, and there's already a Citrix offering up there, what is exactly is the difference in that? The Citrix offering on AVD and then going to Citrix Cloud, what's the difference?
Yeah, so the AVD is really it's its own offering, if you will. That is Microsoft's, VDI or Cloud PC type of offering. So AVD, from I'll say a marketing standpoint, or the name there, is really its own offering. From a Citrix side, what we integrate with from an AVD standpoint is really the infrastructure as a service components of Microsoft Azure. And then we can deploy down that Windows 10 multi-session virtual machine, which really is the bread and butter of AVD. So most customers, when they see AVD, the thing that really appeals to them, again, is going to be the Windows 10 multi-session, so that I can run all my native OneDrive integrations, my Teams and Office 365, and get better density because I'm running a true Windows 10, but it's multi-session. So that is... Yep, go ahead.
So if you're doing the Citrix offering from Azure yourself, you're actually having to manage each of the different components. Whereas if you go to Citrix Cloud, you guys will do the delivery controller, all that stuff, right? Those upgrades.
Correct. Yeah. With AVD, there's no real machine management, if you will. So it really becomes a dedicated VDI, and you would still manage it with something like an SCCM or other type of management component software. With Citrix DaaS, we are going to give you the capabilities to do master images, machine management, so that you can scale it and have a much more optimal administrative experience, but also a reproducible experience from the user standpoint. Every time they log into that resource, it's going to have all of their applications the same way it was previously, but I'm resetting that desktop every time it reboots, right? It goes back to that master state. Yep.
So that brings up another question. So is it as easy as it is now to update? Because I know in AVD, you have to create a whole new group of machines for a new image. In Citrix,
Nope.
Is it just like dragging a vdisk over to the new vdisk over to the collection? Is it that simple?
So it's actually simpler than that. I'm not worried about the vdisks. That is all automated from our console. So when I want to make an update, I turn that master virtual machine back on. So I just go into my Azure portal, I open up and look at the virtual machines, I turn on my master. I make my updates. When I'm done, I power that virtual machine off, and then I go back to Citrix DaaS. I will then go to my machine catalog, click update catalog, and then I will go choose that master image or that master machine again, and then kicks off the workflows. So it just finds that in that master machine, we take a new snapshot, we handle all of the VHDs, we do all of that behind the scenes for you. And then you can choose when those updates want to occur. Do we want to make those machines reboot now? Do we want to let them just be handled on their next reboot, or we could schedule that?
Okay, cool. Thank
So
you.
it looks like Brian reached out and asked about, you can still use your ADC, and is it optional? Can DaaS be your front end? So the short answer is yes. DaaS can be your front end. We have customers doing that today. They're actually putting VPX FIPS in the cloud of their choice and running all the traffic through that with the ICA proxy to front end their Citrix environment. All right. Is PVS supported in Citrix Cloud? Shane, do you want to take that one?
Yes. The answer is yes. Yeah. So in In Citrix Cloud, you can still connect up a PVS server. So whether that's currently on-premise, you can move the DaaS components, right? If you think of the delivery controller aspect, those can all be moved up into to Citrix Cloud Government. And then I can still run that PVS farm on-premise. The nice thing is I can also run that now in Azure. So if I'm moving to Azure or thinking about it, just know that if I'm a big PVS fan in running that, I personally am a big PVS fan. So I would be able to then stand up PVS servers in my Azure resource location and then manage it just the same way I do on premise. Those machines, they will get registered to the farm, and then I'll be able to go and manage the vDisks from that aspect. So yep, it's certainly available. We are also bringing that online, I think, in Google Cloud. I don't think there's a Gov offering there yet, but it does work in Azure, both in our commercial Azure and Azure Government.
Yeah, I know that was a feature that a lot of customers, really wanted because, there's a lot of us that have come from a PVS background and, just used to managing it that way. So that was a great question, and thanks for asking. So one of the questions I get is, is there a limit or number on how many different resource locations we can have, right? So can I have 5? Can I have 10? But really, you're unlimited, right? So we can have it in a variety of a large number of different resource locations, whether you want to have it on premise, whether you want to have it in the cloud, doesn't matter. We just keep adding them in and set up the cloud connectors to establish the communication. Any other questions from anyone? We want to make sure that we answer everybody's questions.
All right, here's another one. Let's take a look. I'll read. What has been the experience with leveraging heavy data-driven applications on DaaS when the data is still on-prem or other cloud providers, either local baked within the OS apps or streamed? Has there been any best way to handle these? I think that's definitely still a question because when we have the application or desktop, we typically want to keep it close to the data as possible. So unfortunately, we haven't broken the the issues of speed of light yet. So we still have latency to think about. So that is still a concern. So if you're in an on-premise, whether it's East Coast or maybe somewhere central, we typically try to find at least the resource locations to keep that close to the data. From the Citrix DaaS side, the control plane is meant to be highly available. So we are distributed across multiple regions inside of Azure Government. So whether that's east west, the control plane itself is handling all those components. So there's no real concern from a latency standpoint because it's that control infrastructure. With old XenApp farms, we could have different zones in multiple locations. And really that was so that we could have the local environment registering to those workers. So kind of the same approach here, those resource locations, they're just extensions of zones. So no real concern there with like heavy data applications because the workload in the data are still in a region or on-prem location that should be close to that data. So
Yeah,
another good question. Yeah.
One thing to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that. So I have, a customer where Azure is their primary, focus and deployment model for the desktops running, Windows 10 multi-session, but they have large data sets and application that accesses those running in AWS. So what we did is we stood up a virtual app server within that AWS, instance to access that application. Then we just stream the app into the desktop. So you still get all the same kind of flexibility that you're used to in the past with virtual apps and desktops, with Citrix DaaS. So that's how we were able to handle that.
And then I see the question here. So Does Citrix provide the ability to do a proof of concept to make sure you're making the right choice? I see here, POC with Windows 10 or 11. We already migrated the control plane. So is the question there about POCing Windows 10 or 11 or POCing Citrix DaaS? Yeah, because it's easy to POC Windows 10 or 11, right? You could just spin up a new machine catalog and kind of evaluate it. There's no need to to change the control plane there, especially if you're already in Citrix DaaS. There's no real changes there, but I would definitely talk to your account teams. If you're not sure who that is, reach out to Jose, Glenn. We can run through some different demos, some different ways that if we did need to dig a little bit deeper into a proof of concept. Definitely want to make sure that we're we're thinking at it from all the right angles to make sure it is the best fit for you. But absolutely.
I just went and threw up the contact info on the screen there, so that way, if anyone wants to reach out to Jose or myself, we can help get you directed to the appropriate sales team.
Just in reference to my question earlier, wanted to see if we can POC the OS itself in the cloud, not pointing back to on-prem.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're able to do that by just contacting one of the contacts on the screen here to make sure that we can do that. Is that right?
Well, do you already have the Citrix DaaS, like the Citrix Cloud Government control plane? Do you have all that set up already?
The back plane is already in the cloud. The question I asked earlier about not sure if we are in the government because I saw your screen when you logged in, it actually said government on it. Mine does not.
Okay.
So that's what prompted that question. But otherwise, we are out there. We got some catalogs and delivery groups. The migration is not fully finished, but the majority of everything is there because we're kind of debating whether we do move PVS out there the way we have it, or do we just do MCS and do that conversion now than later? So it's kind of figuring out what we need future wise and then doing it now versus like moving and then doing it again, that kind of thing.
Okay, understood. Yep. So yeah, if you've already got Citrix Cloud, kind of the reverse, if you had government, you can run resources in Azure Commercial and Azure Gov. Same thing applies for if you have Citrix Cloud Commercial. You could put connectors and have them in commercial or government of Azure. So if you wanted to POC the, trying to spin up some Windows 10, maybe with PVS there, you could certainly do that. It's just adding a resource location and then having the subscription to spin those resources up. Probably good to reach out to the account team, reach out to us. We can have more one-on-one to dig more into the architecture and figure out what is the correct approach. Glenn, anything that you wanted to add there?
No, I was going to say it sounds like they're already well on their way with having everything up in the cloud already. So adding a new machine catalog for some Windows 10 and 11 testing should be fairly straightforward. But as Shane said, I would reach out to your account team if you're not sure who that is. Reach out to myself or Jose. We can help get you lined up.
Yep. I want to touch on a good thing there. Like, do I move PVS? Do I move to MCS? It's always been like the wars there between the two. I'm actually, if we're in like cloud hosted environments, MCS has really been redesigned from the ground up from a cloud perspective, right? If we think about Azure, works very differently from AWS, for example. So MCS and AWS is completely different. We have different things to think about: storage locations, how are we caching, ways that we'll optimally create those images and then store them for re-provisioning. So in Azure, we were making new enhancements so that we can use the ephemeral disk support, so that we are leveraging the caching mechanisms locally on the physical hosts that host those virtual machines. So really cool stuff there. MCS, don't discount it. It is really good. It's very easy to use so that you don't have to stand up some additional hardware infrastructure or server infrastructure in that location. Both are great options. Again, really good questions.
One other question I have here is the cloud has a little differences between like publishing apps, you know, in the cloud versus on-prem. Like there's different application groups or something like that, I believe is what it's called. You know, so that you can publish. There's some ties to the application group or the delivery group. Can you elaborate a little bit on, you know, the differences between them and which one is preferred or do you see common?
Yeah, so the delivery group, right, is the one that controls which resources could be presented to certain users. That could encompass multiple application groups. The application groups can be tied to the resources themselves. So I could have multiple application groups presented to multiple delivery groups, but each delivery group is not the same. It's kind of confusing, but the application groups really just represent those apps. And if they only reside on a particular set of virtual machines, that's kind of the way that we would present them to those machines only. It kind of works in the way of if we wanted to add tags, which takes us to like a fourth dimension. But tags can be a way that we want to make sure that this app only launches on this set of machines. So it really ties down to how you want to control, let's say like an SAP or some type of heavy application. That one we might want to reside on a specific set of application servers. And then also it's a heavy app. So we want to target and say, well, when we receive, 60% user onboarding onto this VDA, we call that 100% load. So it really factors in how we want to differ and divvy up those resources to the users, because the application may, it may run a little bit differently than just Microsoft Office, for example.
Okay, thank you. Do we have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
So authentication in the cloud, do you have multiple ways to authenticate users like Active Directory or Azure or what have you? One of the additional options, if you have like a premium or different licensing, you get to see like adaptive authentication, which is kind of a new authentication method that's kind of, I assume, leverages ADC behind the scenes somehow. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Just explain what it is and how it works, or.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into adaptive authentication. The nice thing is you're in commercial, so there are some additional features there that we don't have in Gov quite yet. They are being worked on to bring them over, but adaptive authentication is a new service that does have hosted ADCs by Citrix, and we manage that. And it allows you to do adaptive authentication from the sense of I can use, in factor flow to maybe see that Shane's part of this this domain, so he actually needs to go authenticate against, Azure Active Directory. But when Glenn logs in, he's part of a different team, a different group. We're actually just going to go and use that on-premise Active Directory, and then probably present, another MFA token or, time-based one-time code. So it's definitely, we're using in-factor there. That's how we're presenting that, and we'll hopefully get that into the Citrix Cloud Government control plane, shortly, so that all of us can take advantage of that. But very excited to see new features like that coming into the service.
Okay, so that answers my earlier question. Then I am in commercial at this point, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Good information.
Yeah, no, thank you for the questions. Really great.
All right. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go one more slide here and pass it back over to Jose.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I really appreciate all the active participation. Everyone had some really fantastic questions today. Just a little bit of a recap here. You guys saw a demo on how you can use the Citrix DaaS management control plane to manage a DaaS environment from a single pane of glass, right? So the resources could be located on premises, it could be located in the cloud, or wherever, and use a one management tool to do it all. You get that flexibility. We also talked about how you can do a migration really easily. It was really cool to see how Shane was able to very quickly migrate his on-prem VDI environment to DaaS. We talked about use cases. We walked through the architecture of the solution, along with some of the benefits of using this new platform instead of maintaining this thing status quo, right? We're all trying to, as technology professionals, trying to find better ways to do things, and this is the better way to do things. If you have any additional questions that we didn't cover today, feel free to reach out to your account team or reach out to myself directly. Glenn had my contact information up a little bit earlier. For the individual who won the tumbler, so probably the most important thing, we will be notifying you via email, so congratulations in advance. So just closing thought, again, great questions. Today we did cover things at a fairly high level. So as next steps, what I would recommend for all of you on today's call is to work with us in setting up a deep dive on how Citrix DaaS would be integrated within your environment. I know there were several Microsoft AVD questions as well. So as part of that, we can kind of walk through exactly how Citrix DaaS would integrate with Microsoft AVD and answer any remaining questions around some of the value adds and benefits of having Citrix DaaS be the management plane for AVD. So do we have any other questions that we didn't get to? I think we got through all of them. All right, cool. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, guys.
You got it.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.